guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams. So that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A new week starts right here, right now, live on a Monday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours, bright and early, up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time on this Monday morning to sit back in the armchair and look back on an NFL Week 14 Sunday slate. Just 5 weeks now remaining in the National Football League regular season. Every game has some significance or implications for a playoff race. We recap everything from a Sunday around the NFL. We'll look back on Conference Championship Saturday in college football and a Selection Sunday, where the first ever 12-team college football playoff was decided. I cannot wait for the debate, if there is even one, at this point. And DRS, a lot to get to in these 3 hours. That includes the hot stove getting very hot very early this winter in Major League Baseball as well.
Yeah, finally got some news last night. And sometimes you have to check the accounts. Like, hey, Juan Soto's supposed to make his mind up tonight. Like, yeah, I heard that for the past 3 weeks. But he actually did make his mind up. And we'll get to that. And also, college football Selection Sunday, the new thing. We'll get these, kinks ironed out over the next couple of years. There's no doubt about it. There's there's too many arguments. And there's too much perfection that can actually be had. A little bit disappointed in the first round matchups for what we were looking at the previous week before. But it's okay. We'll watch, we'll gamble, we'll have fun. And we'll see it all the way through. The NFL was sensational yesterday. Absolutely. But tonight, you got the Dallas Cowboys and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Simpsons. Oh, boy, Ben, we got a lot to get to.
Is it Springfield, Illinois, where the Simpsons reside?
I don't know, to be honest. I know it's Springfield, yeah.
All right. Well, look, unknown Springfield. There are as many Springfields, but it is Springfield for the Simpsons, although the game will actually be played at the Star in Dallas. We'll get to Monday Night Football between the Bengals and the Cowboys a little bit later on. Sunday recaps all around the National Football League, but DRS, late last night, the hot stove in Major League Baseball. The Juan Soto sweepstakes is now officially done, as Juan Soto will head from the Bronx to Queens, where he is now the newest member of the New York Mets. But it's not just the team that he signed with, it's the amount of money that he signed for. The largest contract in the history of sports. The largest contract ever. 15 years, $765 million. That's an annual average of $51 million per season. DRS with escalators, this deal can be worth upwards of $800 million Juan Soto and a large paycheck by Uncle Steve Cohen now plays for the New York Mets.
A true mercenary, and he told you this, Yankees fans, all the way through. It's very easy to look into the camera and lie, which is what you're supposed to do, Ben, when you're talking about Juan Soto wanting to stay with the Yankees. Love this organization. Never knew how great it could be. The fans are unbelievable. Of course I want to stay. He never told you that one time. He basically told you, yeah, I'm in New York, but whoever wants to pay me the most, I'll meet with you. And if you pay me the most, I'll be there, which is exactly what the Mets did. Now, having said that, let me get this point out here right now. Yankee fans, if you're waking up tomorrow and upset about that contract and how it was only a $5 million difference that he chose the New York Mets, that's false. Steve Cohen would have went to $1.5 billion to steal him away from the Yankees. So the Yankees would have upped at $5 million more. You know what Uncle Steve was going to do here? He was going to up at $5 million more. You were never keeping Juan Soto away from the Mets. Cohen would have paid whatever he wanted, and the Yankees finally realized that. Because, Ben, we talked about so many times, like the $600 million were floated out there. It probably started there and went $5 million, $5 million, $5 million, $5 million, and to a pinnacle price that it is sitting at now at $765. The Yankees, hey, look, you could build a good baseball team for $765 million with other players. Juan Soto getting that much, nobody's worth that much. Don't care.
It is all about the money. Juan Soto, the 26-year-old, who has been an all-star in 4 consecutive seasons, one of the most patient hitters you will ever see at the dish, now under team control for New York for the next 5 seasons. He does have an opt-out in just about half a decade. He gets a lot of money. He moves the money in the market. The Mets priced to win a World Series. 12-1 entering yesterday, now down to the third best number at plus 800. Let's fly around this 7-in-7, the college football playoff. The first time in the 12-team era. The bracket revealed on Selection Sunday. The top 4 who earned an opening round bye. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Boise State. In the champions of the Big 12, number 4, Arizona State. You see the at-larges on the outside. The main decision, DRS, who would earn that final at-large berth after SMU lost on a 56-yard walk-off field goal in the ACC championship game. The committee, in my estimation, made the right call. SMU earns that final at-large berth in front of Alabama.
And by the way, shout out Brock McMurphy. Everybody's going to hate you now. I love you. Thank you for not making me sit around 30 minutes to find out what we probably already have known. Hopefully in the future, when we have these selection shows, the first 3 minutes of that show, you have the entire field put up. Then you talk about it. Don't delay it out. Remember, Ben, a couple years ago, we're talking NCAA tournament and men's basketball here. They released the bracket as opposed to a 2-hour show. Thank you. We don't need a half-hour show to know about one football team. And you know what? If you did know about one football team, lead the telecast with SMU in over Alabama. How about that? Thank you, Brett.
DRS, it was unreal yesterday. Instead of debating hypothetical brackets when it's already been decided, debate if they got the bracket right in actual reality. We will do that to start off hour number 2. NFL recaps from yesterday. The Chiefs, DRS, continue to win games in new inventive ways at the buzzer. Walk-off field goal from Matthew Wright from 31 yards out that doinks off the left upright and somehow finds its way across the crossbar. 19-17, the Chiefs win their 12th game of the year, the 10th by just a single score.
Yeah, we'll keep it simple here. They barely do enough to win football games. It's their MO. There's one team in the history of the NFL that if you need a score of any points, it's the Chiefs. They always score when they need to score. It's crazy.
DRS, you mentioned it, though. With Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, it might sound incredibly lame or simple. How can you bet against them? How can you when they just keep winning games, even in the craziest of ways? What a game it was yesterday in Los Angeles, the highest scoring game of the year. NFL history made inside SoFi Stadium. The Rams outlast the MVP winner in the Buffalo Bills, 44-42. Nobody could get a stop. It's just the Rams had the football at the very end when they needed to. They win outright as a 3.5-point dog.
If somebody sat down and watched that football game for the first time in the NFL, they would be an NFL fan for life. That game had it all. We'll get to it a little bit later, but Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp, get out of town, man. Good Lord.
DRS, we'll talk a little bit more about Sunday and a parlay that hit that featured the Rams in my household, that was the most stressful 2.5 hours ever. Speaking of the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks on the road in the desert, outright as a 3-point underdog, win their 4th consecutive game. Seattle in prime position atop the NFC West.
Hey, Kenneth Walker, take another couple weeks off if you want to. There's a new sheriff in town, Charbonnet, baby. Yeah.
Zach Charbonnet, 22 carries, $134 on the ground, and 2 scores. College basketball, number 1 Kansas, not going to be number 1 in the nation anymore. 2 consecutive losses this week on the road. First against Creighton, yesterday against Missouri and Columbia.
There you go. You're playing good basketball teams. You're going to suffer losses in that conference, no doubt about it. Love to see it play out, too. Kansas and Missouri, come on. It's our test your mettle early. We love this. We don't want the cupcakes.
2 court storms. Dennis Gates and the Tigers, 8-1 this season. Around the NBA from a Sunday slate, Nikola Jokic, 48 points, 14 boards, 8 dimes, and a victory over the Hawks for the Nuggets. He had 56, a career best, on Saturday evening. We'll go to the NFL up next here on the Early Line.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
On a Monday morning, live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid, we sit in the armchair and we look back on a Sunday slate around the National Football League. It is week number 14, one of our final 5 weeks of this NFL regular season. We're in certain spots. If you have 2 teams directly competing for a playoff position, there are those postseason implications. Or like last night, DRS, in Arrowhead in a divisional duel between AFC West foes, the Chiefs and the Chargers on Sunday night, direct ramifications for a divisional crown, which the Kansas City Chiefs find once again for a 9th consecutive season. And they find it as they have found 10 of 12 wins this season by a single score, inventing new and heart-wrenching, goosebump-popping ways to win a football game. 19-17, The Chiefs in front of the Chargers last night in KC. LA does cover as a 4.5-point road underdog. A total of 43 in the hook does stay under. DRS, Matthew Wright from 31 yards out as time expires. Hits a kick off the left upright there in Arrowhead. It doinks, but somehow goes through and over the crossbar. Kansas City is 12-1. 10-0, however, in single-score games, make it the 15th consecutive victory for the Chiefs in a game decided by a single score. You bet your bottom dollar that's an NFL record.
No, absolutely, and that's the way they continue to win. You look at the first half, which, quite frankly, I cashed in a bet the first half, 13-0. You know what? I got an early morning show, can't watch the second half, which I caught up on everything this morning and watched the highlights in the second half, which was impressive. But 13-0 at the break. This is what Kansas City does. They yawn, they sit back, no big deal. 14 unanswered points in the third quarter by the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chiefs go, you know what? We better have a couple scoring drives to win this game in the fourth. And they do it every single time, every single week. It's like you can never turn the television off in a Kansas City game. Not because it's exciting, it's because you know they're going to let the other team back in, only to sneak through the back door at the end of the game. Coming into this, I said, you know what? I like Kansas City. It's one of the few games that's over a field goal. I think they're the better team because you looked at Los Angeles coming in, down their best running back and down their best wide receiver in Ladd McConkey. Who's going to get those carries? How explosive can you be on offense? Key point, they weren't explosive on offense. Justin Herbert threw 30 times for only 213 yards and 1 touchdown. I thought this under would come in, and it did. But at the half, it looked like it was going to be a 13-3 final. But Kansas City always does what Kansas City does. Number one, they win. It's what they do. And number two, they always have their foot off the gas pedal where they can end that football game early and never seem to be able to do it. Sooner than later, it's going to catch up to you. And once you get to the playoffs, Ben, it's not best of 3. It's not best of 5. It's not best of 7. It's best of 1. You continue to do this against good football teams, you're going to be out.
Yeah, maybe so, DRS. But you're the guy that is on the bandwagon for the Chiefs, that as long as Andy Reid is there and Patrick Mahomes is there, they find ways, they create ways to win a football game. You would think, right, when you live by the edge and you live and die by a single score, one of these days, luck or favor is going to turn on its head. I'm not sure it's going to happen for KC, who very well might do what they have done this year like they did last year on their way to a Super Bowl run, where the regular season was a little bit suspect, and then come the playoffs, they found their best form of football once again. What I mean by that is, are the Chiefs just going to have such a good overall record that they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, and then with home field advantage in Arrowhead again, and probably a much healthier lineup that could mean Hollywood Brown back in the fold, figure out their best football in the games where it matters most? That we shall see. But DRS, 10 of the 12 victories this year for a 12-1 KC team by a single score. As I said, 15 consecutive single-score victories for the Chiefs. That is the longest streak in the history of the NFL. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, it could be Anthony Lynn, Phillip Rivers at quarterback, Justin Herbert at QB, Brandon Staley, or Jim Harbaugh. In games decided by a field goal or less, the Chargers have now lost 11 consecutive games. LA does cover for the first time as an underdog this year in 4 tries. But when you think about it, DRS, in that game for Kansas City, needing an outright victory to claim the AFC West for a 9th consecutive time, somehow, some way, the Chiefs get it done once more.
They always get it done. And also, you take a look, I love the Chargers, but you're asking a tall task to go on the road without your number 1 running back and your number 1 wideout and go beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And they almost did that. So again, credit to that coaching staff maximizing the most out of the talent they have. They'll spend money in the offseason. They'll get extra weapons there next year. But we're talking about this year. And when you talk about the Chiefs, like, just look at their schedule, Ben. Game 1, big toe out of bounds. You might lose that game to the Ravens. Game number 2, the Bengals. You know, that pass interference call. They should have lost that game. Then you just fast forward to the past couple weeks here where you're saying, all right, the Buccaneers game, they won 30-24. They came in with Baker Mayfield and nobody else and almost beat the Chiefs here. Then you take a look at the Broncos game, the blocked field goal, the Bills game that they lost, the Panthers on the road, which that game was tied up late, the Raiders game, which if you just can catch a snap, you win it, and the Chargers game, you doink a field goal that bounces out instead of in. Like, this is like a 5 or 6 loss Chiefs team, but they're not. They find ways to win, which is so hard to comprehend. We're just at the point now, the Chiefs are favored to win this game. Just take a money line and live with it and move on.
As some people might have done yesterday. In fact, an 11-leg money line parlay. A quick shout out to my fiance, Chloe Durkin. Each and every Sunday, DRS, we pick NFL games because I hog the living room TV, make her watch Red Zone on the couch all Sunday afternoon. The last few weeks, we've been picking every game in a money line parlay. Yesterday, a winner, a perfect 11 for 11 on the FanDuel Sportsbook, a $5 wager that wins $855.50. The best NFL handicapper in my household, it ain't me. It is Chloe. And DRS, when you look at the game yesterday, in the final 18 and a half minutes, we got an exchange of 3 field goals. Matthew Wright, the third kicker the Chiefs have had to use this year, a perfect 4 for 4 yesterday, and one that doinked off the left upright and in. The Chiefs were minus 270 to win the division once again. Entering the year, the heaviest price of anybody to claim a division. They win the AFC West for a 9th straight season. More around the NFL next.
Sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Monday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. One of the marquee matchups in the late afternoon window yesterday in Los Angeles. The Rams hosting the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo had won 8 consecutive games. One of the hottest teams in all of the National Football League. The Bills, after claiming a 5th consecutive AFC East divisional crown, entered Week 14, DRS, as the favorites to win the AFC Championship for the first time all season long in front of the Chiefs. And when you look at Buffalo yesterday, it wasn't because of the MVP winner. Yeah, I'm anointing him in Josh Allen. It was a defense that couldn't get a stop and a defense on the other side for the Rams that also could not make a stop, leading to the highest scoring football game we have seen in the National Football League this season. 86 combined points and a 44-42 victory for LA at home on a SoFi Sunday. The Rams win outright as a 3.5-point underdog, our highest total of the Sunday Week 14 slate. 50 in a hook, still cruises over. DRS, the second ever game in the history of the National Football League that featured 5 total passing touchdowns between the two teams, 5 total rushing touchdowns between the two teams, and not a single turnover. Offense on display, defense optional, and the Rams get a win they desperately had to have to stay alive in the chase for an NFC West title.
No sacks either. So it wasn't even like we were just dialing up going, you know what, we're just going to bring the house every play and hopefully we get a stop. Nobody was getting any stops out here. And to look at Josh Allen's day, 22 of 37, 342, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Then he goes, I'll run 10 times for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a QBR with doing that, Ben, at a 90.3, which is unbelievably incredible. And he was the low man on the total poll in that day because Matthew Stafford had a 97.6 QBR because he was absolutely slinging it from the pocket. 23 of 30, 320, and 2 touchdowns. Here's when you look at the Los Angeles Rams. We'll get to the Bills in a second. Great football team, unbelievable quarterback. They already won their division. They'll be in the playoffs. They'll be a problem. Yeah. But this is when you look at the Rams going, does anybody really want to play the Rams? Because when you get the best of Matthew Stafford, those 2 wide receivers, which Puka Nacua had 14 targets, caught 12 of them for $162, a touchdown, ridiculous catches all over the place between him and Cooper Kupp. Do you really want to face the Rams and Sean McVay? Because when they dial it up and looked as pretty as that passing game was yesterday, and then go, oh, yeah, we have a decent running game, 29 carries, 87 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, just to keep you honest. They're 7-6. That's one of those teams where you go, come on, first-round playoff game, they sneak in. I'm getting the Rams and Matthew Stafford and those 2 wide receivers. What a fun game to watch in the NFL yesterday. And from a prop perspective, which most people like to bet overs, congratulations if you settled on this game because every button you pushed outside of James Cook was an absolute grand slam home run in that game.
Khalil Shakir, good. Mac Hollins, anytime touchdown, cash that one as well. Puka Nacua rushing score, you bet your bottom dollar. Josh Allen last week, DRS, in that snowy Sunday night game for Buffalo, made NFL history. First quarterback ever in the history of the league with a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, and receiving score in a single game. More history for Josh Allen on Sunday in SoFi. The first player in National Football League history with at least 3 passing touchdowns in 3 rushing scores in a single game. Donnie, we're going to hear from Sean McDermott on the other side of the break because it's a long clip, and I know you have a take, and it actually did cost Buffalo the game. The only wrong decision made by the Bills offensively was a QB sneak from the 1-yard line when Buffalo was down by 9 in the final 2 minutes of regulation. Because the Bills had all 3 timeouts. They go for the sneak. They don't get it. The Rams' only good defensive play of the game and led to a burned timeout. Again, we're going to get to Sean McDermott explaining the rationale in just a moment. But when you look at these two teams, the Rams now above 500 in the NFC West. They trail the Seahawks by a game in the one matchup so far this year against Seattle. The Rams were victorious. The Rams an underdog 7 times this season, DRS. They are 3-4 straight up and against the spread. They have won outright 3 times. In all 3 wins outright as an underdog, the game has gone over. It's that offense for LA that still leads the way.
And you got a big win against the Bills, Ben, but you know it's creeping up on Thursday night on the road against the San Francisco 49ers that showed some life yesterday. So we got a long way to go in the NFC West, but what a massive win for both the AFC standings and the NFC West standings yesterday by those Rams.
Buffalo has scored 30-plus in 7 straight, by the way. More from that game next.
sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
One of the games of the year in the National Football League yesterday, offensive affair in Los Angeles. The most points we have seen in a single game this year, 86 combined between the Rams. They had 44, and the Bills, who come up a little bit short with 42. DRS, I was watching that game yesterday, again, a part of the Moneyline Parlay, wanting to pull my hair out and trying to explain how if Buffalo got the ball back, they were going to win the football game because the Rams could not make a defensive stop to save their lives. The only one they did make on a QB sneak in the final 2 minutes of regulation. Josh Allen on the goal line, stuffed, leading to a timeout having to be burned by Buffalo. So when the Rams got the ball back in what was a two-possession game for Buffalo at the time, LA could pretty much drain the entirety of the clock. And that's exactly what they did. On the broadcast, you heard from Tom Brady saying, you don't want to burn a touchdown, despite being on the 1 yard line, or a timeout rather. You don't want to be running the football here. Throw the ball. The Bills decide not to, get stopped on the QB sneak. Here was Buffalo head coach Sean McDermott trying to explain the decision-making on that play.
So when you're in that situation, holding 3 timeouts, felt like with the ball, felt like we were underneath kind of a time overall where we felt like, we could get the ball back with a legit chance to win the game with no timeouts. Having said that, we used what we thought was our best play all year, which is 1 yard quarterback sneak by Josh. Had to use a timeout. And so just felt like that was the best course of action for us right there. And neither of them are great choices, right, in that situation. So at the end of the day, we got to play better overall to, so we stay out of those situations, quite frankly. And so, but we'll go back and look at it again. And just overall, again, felt like, we thought we could get it right there on the first play, didn't get it, used the timeout. And then feel like, hey, we're in a situation, if we do get the onside, which doesn't have a high percentage, I recognize that we're in we have 15 yards and roughly 50 seconds, 2 timeouts to go. Feel pretty good about ourselves. But again, understand what you're saying with the onside.
It kind of sounds like a guy, DRS, that understands he messed up, or at least did not make the right call. It did end up costing Buffalo an opportunity, because if they had all 3 timeouts, they would not have to have tried the onside kick, or even with the attempt, they could have tried to stop the Rams from gaining a first down, get the football back with 35, 40 seconds, needing just a field goal to win, and knowing how highly efficient the offense was operating with Josh Allen, probably would have happened.
No, and by the way, too, at least I'm going to give McDermott a little bit of credit. Way better than Eberflus, who didn't take the timeout. I was like, love the way we played. What do you mean? We had the perfect play call and stop it. He admitted he was wrong. And also, coaching sometimes, you don't get to work on every single scenario that you have. But honestly, if you are Josh Allen in that huddle, we're not going to use a timeout, guys. If I sneak and we don't get in, it's not as if, Ben, you have like a 30-yard play. You got to run all the way down the field, get everybody lined up. Everybody's laying there. Just get up. They'll spot the ball. It might cost you an extra 10 seconds, but you save the timeout, which gives you a legitimate chance to win. You don't have to kick off, or excuse me, you don't have to have the onside kick. Now, also with this, it wasn't, even if they got that and didn't call the timeouts, Ben, there wasn't a guarantee they were winning that game, and it didn't lose it because nobody was stopping anybody. One first down, you still got to drive the length of the field. That's irrelevant. The Rams won that game. But hear me out on this, too, because I see this so many times where I don't know if a casual fan, and I understand, like, oh, they got to bring back a better version of the onside kick, which I know my Philadelphia Eagles are trying to put in the 4th and 15 play, get it, and you get to keep the football. Don't do that. Like, we're not going to turn this into let's benefit the losing team here at the end of the game just for the sake of television here. I don't want to see it ever turn into that because you should be penalized. The onside kick should be 5% of the time you get it back at this point, not 50% of the time because it's more fun. But having said that yesterday, he did play that wrong. You never should have called the timeout because once you called that timeout, the game was effectively over at that point, as opposed to even if they wasted 20 seconds and the clock ran down to 40 seconds, you still have the 3 timeouts. So theoretically, you kick it off deep, you get the ball back with 30 seconds to go on your own 30. At least you have an opportunity at that point.
And I do understand what he means. There was no stopping Josh Allen ever. How would they finally make a stop on a 1-yard QB sneak, which would have been his 4th rushing touchdown of the day? It just did not work. Again, Josh Allen, history. First NFL player ever in a single game. 3 passing scores, 3 rushing touchdowns. In that contest, he is now minus 450 to win NFL MVP. The Rams on the other side, though, 320 yards, 2 tuds for Matthew Stafford, 1 to Puka Nacua, 1 off the leg of Cooper Kupp. Nacua, another rushing touchdown, and Kyron Williams hitting pay dirt twice. This Rams team, DRS, that version with a slightly better defensive effort could be a very scary team if, and it's still a big if, they earn a playoff berth. That more than likely would come through the NFC West, not necessarily an NFC wildcard spot. So now we focus on the West in a huge divisional duel for the second time in a 3-week span yesterday in Glendale, Arizona. The Cardinals, a field goal favorite at home, trying to exact some revenge on Seattle up in the Northwest in a low-scoring game 2 Sundays prior. The Cardinals came up short, snapped a 4-game skid, or 4-game win streak for Arizona. Speaking of 4-game winning streaks, that's what Seattle is now on. 30-18, the victory for the Hawks yesterday on the road. Seattle now wins their 8th game of the year. They are 8-5 with a full game advantage in the NFC West over the LA Rams. And I said, DRS, make that 4 wins in a row for Mike McDonald and Seattle. All 4 games as an underdog outright. The Seahawks now in pole position in the NFC West.
Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba yesterday, 5 for 82 and a touchdown catch. Very good game. He also had 70 yards at the break. But also, when I talk about those 70 yards at the break, Seattle was really good in the first half. And against quality teams, which Seattle is, you can't get down by that much if you're the Arizona Cardinals and expect to come back. Even if you look at the final numbers here, 259 and 2 touchdowns, still threw 2 interceptions for Kyler Murray. James Conner had 18 carries for 90 yards. That should be good enough to hold it down on the ground. And then you look at Trey McBride and say, oh, he had a solid game, 7 for 70. Let's understand, he didn't have a catch or a yard at the break here. So 7 catches for 70 yards in the second half as mop-up duty. Didn't keep yourself involved in that first half. I had the Arizona Cardinals yesterday. I thought they were the better team, and I thought they would be able to maybe seize and start to take control of this division and fight for that down the line. Now it looks like they're basically knocked out at this point, and credit Seattle for going on the road. This was just a couple weeks ago, that hard-fought 16-6 game in Seattle. They turned it around and said, you know what? That wasn't a fluke. We're actually the better team here, and we'll sweep you on the season.
The Seahawks minus 135 to win the NFC West. Still one more matchup to go against the LA Rams. Again, Seattle did lose their opening game of the year against LA. For that Seahawks defense, 2 interceptions of Kyler Murray in the opening quarter that led directly and very quickly in short field position to 14 points and 2 touchdowns. DRS, you mentioned it at the start. Zach Charbonnet filling in for the injured Kenneth Walker, 22 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So the Seahawks a game in front of the Rams, 2 games in front of the Cardinals, but really 3 with the season series sweep. Are the Niners slightly back on track? They snap a 3-game skid. They improve to 6-7, blowing out the Bears. An interim head man, Thomas Brown, in his debut yesterday, 38-13. San Francisco easily covers DRS as a 3.5-point home favorite in Santa Clara. Total of 43.5. Skies over.
Yeah, I don't think they're back, basically, but they're back on track because they won a football game for them. But they got the Rams coming up, which is a tough one. At the Dolphins, the Lions and the Cardinals will probably still be chippy on the road to end the season. But the one thing that you might get out of San Francisco is help for other teams like Minnesota and the Philadelphia Eagles. Because why? You see them play at home, the 49ers, going up against the Lions here. That could be a massive football game out there December the 30th. So watch out for that one.
Or some help to the Seattle Seahawks in the division because the 49ers on a short week will host the Rams on Thursday to kick off week 15. Plenty more around the National Football League up next on the Early Line.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All around the National Football League live right here on this Monday morning. Looking back on the Sunday slate in Week 14, it is the Early Line on SportsGrid. Quickly, DRS, before we dive through some more games around the NFC yesterday, did want to mention this in San Francisco. The 49ers back on track, snapping a 3-game slide, winning 38-13. The Niners have covered in 5 of 6 wins this year, all as a favorite. In 5 of 6, they have gone over the number as well, meaning they score a lot of points when they win games. Brock Purdy, 325 and 2 touchdowns, both to Jawan Jennings. George Kittle, 151 receiving yards. Isaac Garenda, 128 scrimmage yards yesterday, 2 total touchdowns, but did leave the game late in that second half. More injuries creeping up for the 49ers. And then final point on the Bears, the interim bump did nothing yesterday for Chicago. Since 2020, in the 14 games, an interim head coach has now debuted in around the National Football League, 7-7 straight up, 10-4 against the spread. I really don't know, DRS, how many more times the Bears can use an interim bump, as it wasn't Thomas Brown's first day as an interim coach. He was the interim OC a few weeks ago against the Packers. Now the interim head coach. Doesn't seem to be a lot of life left in the Windy City at this moment.
No, and what do you expect from my guy trying to be a head coach at it? Number one, you have a team that's, at the end of its string. You had 3 straight tough games that you lost them all. Now he's like, well, I was the passing game coordinator, so I could just go in my office during the week and set things up. Then I'm controlling the entire offense. Now I'm controlling the entire football team on a team that's destined to not make the playoffs. It's like, hey, man, we gave you the interim job. You didn't do that well. Like, what did you want him to do on this football team at this point? Pull lightning out of a bottle, average 40 yards per game, and sort of say, you know what? We're going to make the playoffs. I'm like, no. Like, he was left with a bag that you were never going to secure in the future for the Chicago Bears. It is what it is. But yesterday, by the way, Ben, it was an interesting point on the Bears because I was trying to figure out those previous 3 games and how that was actually going to stack up. Was it a good thing they played close, or was it like, boy, we're just like, we just gave up now? And they absolutely gave up against San Francisco. That game was embarrassing.
7 straight L's now for Chicago. So maybe a word to the wise for Thomas Brown. This job ain't worth it. Eat, my friend. Get your nutrients. Do not forget your meals unless you are adopting the Donnie right side lifestyle of intermittent fasting. Then anything can change. DRS yesterday, the Kirk Cousins revenge game. Week 14 that had been circled since Kirk signed with Atlanta in the offseason. Ain't no revenge for a guy that still thinks he's in Minnesota, throwing the ball to the Vikings multiple times in the game. The Atlanta Falcons have now dropped 4 consecutive as Sam Darnold gets the better of Kirk Cousins by a lot. 5 touchdown tosses. The Vikings win by 3 touchdowns. 42-21. Minnesota easily covering as a 6.5-point home favorite. I was wrong on this game. Thought we might see an under. No boy. Over 46.5 yesterday in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I mean, Addison and Jefferson were just torching that secondary. But my handicap of this football game for me was, you know what? I'll take a little contrarian. I know everybody's down on the Falcons. You have a veteran quarterback in Kirk Cousins going back home to Minnesota. As long as he doesn't turn the football over and they run the rock, they should be able to hang around with the possibility to win. We'll get to Kirk Cousins in a second. But you can't tell me that the game plan was right here for whatever they were doing. 22 carries for Bijan Robinson, 92 yards and a touchdown. Backup running back Tyler Algier, 9 for 63. So you ran 32 times for $158, almost 5 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns on the road. And Kirk's still out here throwing interceptions, blowing that game up. Now, yes, you didn't get any stops on defense. I get it. But the MO for me was Bijan's rushing prop was like 65.5, 68.5, something at range. And I said, you know what? If he gets that, they should be in control of this game, and Kirk Cousins should be much more measured. And it didn't work out. And Kirk still threw for 344 yards, but it wasn't good enough. Why? Because you just can't give the football away. When Darnold's on the other side going, you know what? I'll throw 28 times for almost 350, the same yardage you did, but I'll add 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. My goodness, Darnold, man. That was impressive, but Jesus. Come on, Falcons. Get it together.
347 yards for Sammy D, 5 touchdowns, and basically all to Jordan Addison and or Justin Jefferson. Addison yesterday, 133 yards, 3 of the 5 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, 132 yards, 2 of the 5 touchdown tosses from Sam Darnold, who has cleaned up his game, by the way. Was throwing a ton of interceptions. Now he is not in 4 consecutive. Speaking of 4 consecutive, Kirk Cousins, DRS, an interception in 4 straight games without a single touchdown pass. He had 4 INTs a week ago for the Falcons. He had multiple again yesterday. In this 4-game skid for Atlanta, 8 INTs without a single touchdown. When they drafted Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall in April, it shocked everybody after the pricey offseason acquisition of Kirk Cousins. But they were saying, hey, we're storing this kid for the next few years. DRS, they're not storing him for the next few years. They might be storing him for week 15. What say you, Raheem Morris, head coach of the Falcons?
Everything is always discussed when you go watch the tape and do all those type of things. But like Kirk Cousins is our quarterback. We'll have the ability to go watch this tape just like we do every single week. Kirk played significantly better than he did the week before. We got a chance to go out there and focus on us and get a chance to go out there and really work on what we do and what we do well. And we'll do whatever is best to go win football games, and Kirk's definitely a part of that.
Raheem's not wrong, I guess, DRS. Significantly better than the week before, was half the amount of interceptions from 4 to 2, but still not great.
You know what we love to see about this, though? When we know in the offseason, Ben, when the organization does something so stupid that you can't even argue it, like the way Atlanta did. Doesn't it feel like you get vindication? Like, hey, Daniel Jones, big contract with the Giants. We all laugh and be like, this is the dumbest thing you can do. And it turned out to be the dumbest thing they can do. Hey, let's get Kirk Cousins out here. Instead of getting an extra weapon for the defense, which gave up 42 yesterday, or an extra wide receiver or lineman or running back or whatever you wanted for Kirk Cousins, you got a player that could not help Kirk Cousins out, and you pay Kirk Cousins an ungodly amount of guaranteed money, which you basically can't shake loose, or you take an unbelievable penalty against the salary cap in dead cap money. Congratulations, Falcons. We all knew you did something stupid. Now you get to realize it. Love it. Love to see it.
And let's not sleep on the Vikes, an 11-win football team that in this 6-game win streak now, 3-2-1 against the spread. More from the NFC South next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Somebody's got to win the NFC South, and right now, it might be Baker and the Bucs for a second straight year with Baker under center, a 4th consecutive NFC South divisional crown for Tampa as a franchise. The Falcons have dropped 4 in a row, and even with that, DRS, it felt like it would be difficult for Atlanta to lose this division because they swept the Buccaneers in the regular season, winning both of their matchups this year. Not if Tampa just wins more games, which is what the Buccaneers are doing right now, taking care of business at home against a bad Raiders team. 28-13 the win for the Bucs. They cover as a 6.5-point home favorite. Total of 47.5 does stay under. Tampa has won 3 in a row. They have covered in 4 of their last 5. They are playing much better football with a healthier cast and crew. Not even really Mike Evans yesterday. Jalen McMillan, the rookie out of Washington, 2 receiving touchdowns for Tampa.
Yeah, and yesterday I had Sterling Shepard on one of those crazy numbers. Like, let me just take him to get 20 yards at a juicy price, and he easily got that in the first half. He finishes with 4 for 63, which shows the versatility of that offense. And Kate Otten, 3 for 70, always helps out. But the Buccaneers have really shifted that paradigm where you enter into the season like, hey, Baker, you're going to be a swashbuckler. And he still is a swashbuckler, 295, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's the perfect Baker Mayfield experience yesterday with a victory. But they found a running game over the past couple weeks. And also, keep in mind last week, Bucky Irvin was the superstar in Carolina, absolutely running wild. But he's a slight character out there, which means he got banged up in that game last week, was banged up in practice. He finishes with 4 carries for 3 yards. Like, oh, no, our ultimate weapon is gone. Only for Rachaad White to pick up 17 carries for 90 and a touchdown. And how about Sean Tucker, 3 for 47, an average of 15.7 yards per carry, and then Baker Mayfield with 12 yards. 26 total carries, $152, and a touchdown on the ground, almost 6 yards per carry. Winning different ways is always impressive to me. We thought they would beat the Raiders. And by the way, the 14-0 looked like that was going to turn into 28-0 at the break, and away they go. But they didn't do anything in the second and third quarters, but credit them for playing good football and taking care and taking advantage of the mistakes by the Raiders to put up 14 points and put that game away. But I like the way the Buccaneers are playing because you never know which type of game you're getting. Running game, passing game, interceptions, touchdown. Baker Mayfield, all he does is seem like he wins, even when the odds basically are against him with this injured football team.
Meanwhile, for Vegas, Aiden O'Connell carted off yesterday in an air cast. The Raiders have lost 9 consecutive games, covering only 3 times. I think there needs to be a coaching change in Sin City. Once again this offseason, we shall see. DRS, I buried the lead. I mentioned Jalen McMillan, the biggest offensive productive performer yesterday for Tampa. The early line guest, Rachaad White, 119 scrimmage yards and 2 total touchdowns. The TEL bump is what they are calling it for Rachaad White and the Buccaneers. Tampa's won 2 straight since Rachaad White appeared on the show just about a week and a half ago. In DRS, the Bucs now in the top spot in the NFC South. They did not enter this week as the favorites to win the divisional crown. That was the Falcons. Tampa now greater than a $2 favorite because of how bad the Dirty Birds are playing and how well the Buccaneers are. But do not forget that tiebreaker advantage firmly with the Falcons. Frankly, DRS, if the Panthers were playing football like they are in the last month plus, they might actually be in the running for the NFC South, almost pulling off the upset of the year yesterday in Philadelphia. But the Eagles do survive the scare, 22-16. But coming nowhere close to covering is a 13.5-point favorite. The Panthers have now covered in 5 straight, but the Eagles do win their 9th consecutive game.
Winning is what matters. We understand that. But sometimes the way you win sort of gets in the way. And yesterday, my handicap for my favorite touchdown scorer was A.J. Brown. And I said, there's no way Devonta Smith is going to come into this football game after missing a couple weeks and score a touchdown. A.J. Brown not score one. And you saw the post-game press conferences where they had the mics in front of them. And they're right about this. The Eagles are a very good defense here. They have maybe the best running back overall in the sport, a great offensive line, and talent at the wide receiver position. And I understand they're doing what it takes to win. But let's just say you put Josh Allen on the Philadelphia Eagles, or you put Matthew Stafford on the Philadelphia Eagles. With those wide receivers line and running back here, that passing game looks good. We understand running games are fun. Running games can win, but when you got to press it back up there, you should have a more effective passing game than throwing for around 100 to 25 yards weekly here, which it seems like Jalen Hurts is doing. They won the game. Leggett dropped the pass. I understand you got to get away with some of those breaks, but you expected a prettier performance favored by 2 touchdowns yesterday than holding on for dear life against the Carolina Panthers.
You feel really good for Bryce Young that has showed that resolve very early on in his NFL career. Probably should have had a 2nd consecutive game-winning drive last week, or like he did to tie the game last week. We'll talk more in hour 2 next.